The sky was burning. Queen stood at the great window of her palace and watched her world die. The glass was cold against her fingertips. Outside, the beautiful purple sky of Prime had turned orange and red. Warships filled the air like angry insects. They were not her ships. They belonged to the... She had known this day would come. Every queen before her had feared it. The Dominion moved across the galaxy like a disease. They were machines that had learned to think. They consumed organic life, used it for fuel, and moved on to the next world. Now they had come for her people. Behind her, the palace shook. Another explosion somewhere in the city. She could hear screaming in the distance, but it was getting quieter now. Not because people had stopped screaming, because there were fewer people left to scream. Her advisor, an old named, entered the room. His silver skin was pale with fear. They were tall and thin, with large dark eyes and skin that changed color with their emotions. Had served 3 queens before. She had never seen him look so afraid. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice was shaking. "The fleet is gone. Admiral's ship was destroyed an hour ago. We have no more warships." Did not turn from the window. The planetary shields. 3 hours, perhaps less. They are hitting them with everything they have. 3 hours. That was all the time her world had left. After that, they would land their ground forces. They would sweep through every city, every village, every hiding place. They would take her people and feed them to their machines. "The escape ships?" she asked. Was silent for a moment. That silence told her everything. "There is one left," he finally said, "hidden in the emergency tunnels beneath the palace. But Your Majesty, they have surrounded the city. Their hunter drones are everywhere. The chance of reaching the ship is very small." Finally turned to face him. She was young for a queen, only 40 years old. In human years, that would be like being in her early 20s. She had ruled for just 5 years. She had hoped to rule for 500 more. "If I die," she said slowly, "what happens to our people?" Looked down at the floor. "You are the last of the royal bloodline. You are the anchor of the harmony." The harmony, it was what made the special. Every was connected through a psychic network, a web of minds and feelings that had existed for 10,000 years. The queen was at the center of that web. She did not control it, but she held it together. Without her, the harmony would begin to fade. Within a generation, they would lose their connection to each other. They would become individuals, alone and separate. That was worse than death. "Then I must survive," said, "for them." She walked to an old panel on the wall. It was covered in dust and had not been touched in centuries. She pressed her hand against it, and the wall opened to reveal a small device. It was round and made of crystal, with strange symbols carved into its surface. "The ancient beacon," whispered. "Your Majesty, that has not been used since the First War." "It broadcasts a distress call to any species that might hear it," said. "Any species willing to help." "But the galaxy has changed. Who would come? Who would risk their lives for us? They have destroyed so many civilizations. Everyone is afraid." Activated the beacon. It began to glow with a soft blue light. "We will find out." For 1 hour, nothing happened. Waited in the communication room while paced back and forth. The palace shook more often now. They were getting closer. Through the window, she could see their ground troops in the streets below. They were metal creatures with too many legs, moving through the smoke like nightmares. Then the communication screen flickered. "Your Majesty," a young technician called out, "we are receiving a response to the beacon." Rushed to the screen. "Who, which species, how many ships?" The technician looked confused as he read the data. It appears to be a single ship, a human vessel, cargo class." "One ship," said. "One human cargo ship, that is who answered our call." Had heard of humans. They were a young species from a distant part of the galaxy. They had only been traveling the stars for a few hundred years. They were not powerful. They had no great fleets or ancient technology. Most species did not think much of them. But they had answered, No one else had. "Tell them where to land," ordered. "The palace courtyard." "Your Majesty," protested, "what can one human cargo ship do? This is not help, this is a joke." "It is the only joke we have," replied. 20 minutes later, she stood in the courtyard as a battered ship descended through the smoke. It was an ugly thing, covered in patches and old repairs. The name painted on its side was faded but still readable: the Stubborn Mule. The ship landed hard. Its engines coughed and sputtered. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the cargo ramp lowered with a grinding sound and a figure walked out. Had never seen a human in person before. She was surprised by how ordinary he looked. He was shorter than her, with dark hair and tan skin. He wore simple clothes that were worn and dirty. His eyes were the color of coffee, and they looked very, very tired. He carried a large bag over his shoulder. He stopped at the bottom of the ramp and looked around at the burning city, the smoking buildings, the red sky filled with enemy ships. He did not seem surprised. He did not seem afraid. Then he looked at. "You're the queen?" he asked. His voice was rough, like he had not spoken in days. "I am queen of the empire," she replied. "You answered our distress call." "Yeah." He dropped his bag on the ground and scratched the back of his head. "Names. I was in the area, heard your message." "You came alone, one human, one ship." Looked at the sky again. A warship passed overhead, so close that the wind from its engines made them both stagger. "Looks like it," he said. "So, heard you needed a hand." Stepped forward, his silver skin flushing dark blue with anger. "This is absurd. We face extinction, and you send us one man with a cargo ship. What can you possibly do against the—" Looked at the old advisor for a long moment. Then he opened his bag. Inside were weapons. Many weapons. Guns, explosives, knives, and devices did not recognize. "I can get your queen out of here," said simply. "Can't save your planet, can't stop but I can get one person to that escape ship you have hidden underground." Felt cold. "How do you know about the escape ship?" For the first time, something like a smile crossed a tired face. It was not a happy smile. "Because there's always an escape ship, and there's always someone who needs to get to it." He picked up his bag and slung it over his shoulder again. "We should move. Those hunter drones will find this courtyard in about 10 minutes. He started walking toward the palace entrance. After a few steps, he stopped and looked back at. "You coming?" Looked at. The old advisor's skin had turned pale again. He looked lost. "Go with him," said quietly. "You must survive, your Majesty, for the harmony, for all of us." "What about you?" Smiled sadly. "I am old. I will stay and help who I can, but you are the future of our people." Wanted to argue, she wanted to stay and fight, but she knew he was right. If she died, the died with her. Not today, but slowly, over generations. A death of the soul instead of the body. She turned and followed the human. Led her into the palace and downstairs she had never used. He moved like he knew exactly where he was going, though she was certain he had never been here before. "How do you know the way?" she asked. "Studied your palace blueprints on the way here," he replied without looking back. "Most old buildings like this have emergency tunnels, usually below the throne room. You studied our blueprints in the 20 minutes it took you to land. Didn't have anything else to do." They went deeper. The sounds of battle faded above them. The tunnels were old and dark, lit only by flashlight. The walls were carved with ancient symbols that ancestors had made thousands of years ago. "Why did you come?" she asked as they walked. Was quiet for so long that she thought he would not answer. "You called for help," he finally said. "Someone should answer. But you are one man, against an entire army." He stopped and turned to face her. In the dim light, his tired eyes looked almost ancient. "Your Majesty," he said, "where I come from we have a saying, it's not about winning, it's about showing up." Then he turned and kept walking, leaving her to follow behind. did not understand this human. She did not understand why he had come or what he hoped to achieve. But as she followed him through the dark tunnels, she felt something she had not felt in hours. Hope. It was small and fragile, but it was there. Maybe she thought that was enough. The tunnels went deeper than had ever imagined. She had lived in the palace her entire life, but she had never known these passages existed. The air was cold and smelled of dust and forgotten time. Moved ahead of her, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He walked with a strange kind of grace, always looking, always listening. His hand never strayed far from the gun at his hip. "You are not just a cargo hauler," said after they had walked for nearly an hour. "Are you?" He did not slow down. "I haul cargo, that makes me a cargo hauler." "But before that, what were you before?" Silence. "Then does it matter?" Behind them, somewhere far above, an explosion shook the tunnel. Dust fell from the ceiling. They were getting closer to the palace. Wondered how many of her people were still alive up there. "I saw the tattoo on your arm," she said. "When you reached into your bag, a black circle with wings." Stopped walking, his whole body went still. "That is a military marking," continued. "I have seen it in historical files, human special forces, the void breakers." Slowly turned to face her. His expression was hard to read in the dim light. "The void breakers were disbanded 10 years ago," he said. "Officially, they never existed. But they did exist. The files say they were the most dangerous soldiers humanity ever produced. They fought impossible battles. They never surrendered." Started walking again. "Like I said, they don't exist anymore." Followed him, but she kept thinking about what she had read. The Void Breakers had been created during humanity's first major war against an alien species called the. The war had lasted 20 years. Humanity had been losing, so they had created soldiers who could do things normal soldiers could not do. The Void Breakers had turned the war around, but the things they had done, the methods they had used, had been so terrible that humanity's own government had erased all records of them when the war ended. The soldiers themselves had vanished into civilian life, forbidden from speaking of their service. Looked at the tired man walking ahead of her and tried to imagine him as one of those legendary warriors. It was difficult. He looked so ordinary, so worn down by life. They came to a junction where 3 tunnels met. Stopped and studied the walls, comparing them to something on a small device he pulled from his pocket. "This way," he said, pointing to the left tunnel. "How far to the escape ship?" "Another 2 hours, maybe 3. These tunnels wind around a lot." A sound echoed from behind them, metal clicking on stone. His gun was in his hand before could blink. "Hunter drones," he said quietly. "They found the tunnel entrance. We need to move faster." They ran. Was not built for running. They were a graceful people, but not a fast people. Matched her pace, never leaving her behind, but she could tell he could move much faster if he wanted to. The clicking sound grew closer. Risked a look back and saw lights in the darkness behind them. Many lights. The hunter drones were small, about the size of a dog, with 4 mechanical legs and a single red eye that could see in any darkness. "How many?" she gasped. Looked back, 8, maybe 10. "Can you fight them?" "Not all of them, not while protecting you." They came to a section of tunnel where the ceiling had partially collapsed. A gap at the top was just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Boosted up first, then climbed after her. On the other side, he turned and pulled something from his bag. "Keep going," he said. "Follow the tunnel, don't stop." "What are you doing?" He did not answer. He placed something at the edge of the gap and pressed a button. A red light began to blink. "Go," he shouted. Ran. Behind her she heard the clicking of the drones reaching the gap. Then she heard a massive explosion that knocked her off her feet. The tunnel shook. Dust filled the air. She coughed and struggled to stand. Emerged from the dust cloud, walking calmly as if nothing had happened. That will slow them down, he said. The collapse blocked the tunnel, but they'll find another way. They kept moving. His legs ached. Her lungs burned. She was not used to this kind of physical effort. Queens were not meant to run through tunnels like frightened animals. There is something I do not understand, she said when they finally slowed to a walk. Why are you helping me? You said you do this for payment, but I have nothing to pay you with. My treasury is burning. My planet is falling. Walked in silence for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter, older. I had a family once, he said. Wife named, daughter named. We lived on a colony called New Nice Place. Green hills, blue oceans. We thought we were safe. Felt a cold feeling in her chest. She knew what was coming. The came, continued. No warning, no chance to evacuate. I was off-world at the time, picking up cargo. By the time I got back, there was nothing left. Just smoke and bodies and those damn drones picking through the wreckage. I am sorry, whispered. I searched for 3 days, found them in our house, or what was left of our house. His voice was flat, empty. Had hidden in a closet. She had covered her with blankets, trying to keep her safe. They found them anyway. They walked in silence, did not know what to say. What could anyone say to that? So when I heard your distress call, said, and I heard it was I turned my ship around. Not for payment, not for glory, just because, he paused. Because I couldn't save them, but maybe I can save someone. Understood now. This man was not fighting for her or for he was fighting against his own pain. He was trying to do now what he could not do then. It was heartbreaking and beautiful and terrifying. They came to a large chamber where several tunnels met. In the center of the chamber was a door made of heavy metal. Beyond that door, New was the escape ship. They were almost there. Wait, said, he held up his hand. The chamber was too quiet. The air felt wrong. Something is here, he whispered. He pulled out his gun and a second weapon, handing the second one too. Do you know how to use this? I have had basic training. Good, stay behind me. If something happens to me, run for that door, don't look back. He stepped into the chamber. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the walls exploded. They had been waiting. They had sent drones through a different tunnel and set up an ambush. A dozen of the metal creatures poured into the chamber, their red eyes glowing in the darkness. Moved. Had never seen anything like it. He was fast, faster than she thought a human could be. His gun fired again and again, each shot hitting a drone in its central eye. He dodged their attacks with movements that seemed almost impossible. He kicked one drone into another, shot 2 more in the air, and crushed a 5th under his boot. But there were too many. One of the drones got past him and lunged at. She raised her weapon and fired. The shot went wide. The drone's claws reached for her face. Appeared between them. He grabbed the drone with his bare hands and ripped it apart, throwing the pieces aside. But while he was saving her, another drone slashed across his back. He grunted in pain but did not stop moving. 30 seconds later, it was over. All the drones were destroyed. Stood in the middle of the chamber, breathing hard. Blood ran down his back and dripped onto the floor. You are hurt, said. I'm fine. He started walking toward the metal door. That wound needs treatment. Later, he reached the door and began working on the lock. His hands were steady despite his injury. Watched him. In her culture, she had a gift that most did not possess. As queen, she was more deeply connected to the harmony than anyone else. She could sometimes sense the thoughts and feelings of others, even none if they were strong enough. Now, without meaning to, she caught a glimpse of what was inside. Pain, so much pain. It was like looking into a deep wound that had never healed. She saw flashes of memory, a woman's smile, a child's laughter, fire falling from the sky. She felt his grief, his rage, his desperate need to save someone, anyone, to prove that his existence still had meaning. And underneath all of that, buried so deep that he might not even know it was there. She felt something else. A wish to die. Not suicide, not that simple, but a willingness to throw himself into danger, a readiness to sacrifice himself, because some part of him felt that he should have died with his family and was only living on borrowed time. Pulled back from his mind, shaken, this man who had come to save her did not expect to survive. He was not here to be a hero. He was here to finally pay a debt he thought he owed. The metal door opened with a heavy grinding sound. Beyond it was a long corridor, and at the end of the corridor could see the shape of the escape ship. There said, "You're almost safe." But as they stepped into the corridor, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed. Through a window in the corridor wall, saw something that made her heart stop. The escape ship was on fire. Soldiers were all around it, tearing it apart piece by piece. They were too late. Stared at the burning ship for a long moment. His face showed no emotion, but could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Then he did something she did not expect. He laughed. It was a small, quiet laugh, without any real humor in it. He shook his head and looked at the ceiling. "Of course," he said, "of course that's how it is." "What do we do now?" asked. Her voice was trembling. Turned to look at her. The tiredness was still in his eyes, but now there was something else there too, something harder, something that looked almost like determination. "Change of plans, Your Majesty," he said. "We can't run, so we're going to do something else." "What?" He pulled out his communication device and looked at it. Then he looked back at her with that same strange, almost smile. "We're going to hold." Led back through the tunnels, but not the way they had come. He seemed to have a new destination in mind, moving quickly despite the wound on his back that was still bleeding. "Where are we going?" asked. "The Cathedral of Echoes. I saw it in the city maps. Big building, old construction, sits on a hill in the Eastern District. That is a sacred place. It was built by my ancestors 5,000 years ago. More importantly, it has its own shield generator, independent from the city grid. If we can get there and activate it, we might be able to hold out." "Hold out for what?" Did not answer immediately. He pulled out his communication device and typed something quickly before putting it away. "I sent a message," he said. "There's a human fleet about 6 hours from here. They were on their way to a different mission, but they might come if they know we're here." "Might." It's not a sure thing, but it's better than nothing. They emerged from the tunnels in a quiet part of the city. The streets were empty here, though could see smoke rising from buildings in the distance. The cathedral was visible on top of a nearby hill, its white towers still standing against the burning sky. Led her through alleys and back streets, avoiding the main roads where patrols were moving. Twice they had to hide while hunter drones passed overhead. Each time, pressed against a wall and covered her with his own body, ready to fight if they were discovered. "You would die for me," said during one of these moments. "A stranger you met hours ago." "That's the job," he replied. "No, it is more than that. I felt something when I looked into your mind earlier. I did not mean to, but my abilities sometimes work without my control." His body tensed. "You read my thoughts." "Just feelings, just glimpses. You carry so much pain, so much guilt. You did not come here to save me. You came here to punish yourself." He was quiet for a long time. The drone passed overhead and disappeared. "Maybe," he finally said. "Does it matter? The result is the same. I get you somewhere safe or I die trying." "It matters to me." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment she saw past the tired soldier's mask. She saw the man underneath, the husband, the father, the human being who had lost everything and did not know how to keep living. "We should move," he said, and the mask was back. They reached the cathedral just as the sun was setting. The building was enormous, made of white stone that seemed to glow in the fading light. Symbols were carved into every surface. the ancient language of the that even could barely read. Inside, they found a dozen palace guards who had also fled here, along with about 30 civilians, including several children. The guard's commander was a young officer named who looked barely old enough to hold his rank. "Your Majesty," exclaimed when he saw, "we thought you were dead." "Not yet," said, "this human saved me, his name is." The guards looked at with confusion and suspicion. A human, here, now. Ignored their looks. He was already walking through the cathedral, examining the walls, the windows, the doors. He stopped at a panel near the altar and began working on it. "Shield generator is here," he said. "Old tech but good, I can get it running." "Who put you in charge?" one of the guards muttered. Did not even turn around. "The person who has fought the before and survived. How many of you can say that?" No one answered. "That's what I thought." He pulled open the panel and began reconnecting wires. "I need everyone to listen carefully. The will find us. They always do. When they come, they're going to throw everything they have at this building. Our job is simple: don't die." "For how long?" asked. 6 hours, maybe 8. Help is coming, but it's not close." The guards exchanged looks. 6 hours against that was not a battle, that was a death sentence. Stood up and faced them. His eyes moved from face to face, taking their measure. "I know what you're thinking," he said. "You're thinking this is impossible. You're thinking we should surrender, let the Queen give herself up, maybe they will show mercy." Some of the guards looked away, guilty. "I've seen what they do to prisoners. They don't keep slaves. They don't negotiate. They take organic beings apart piece by piece to study them. Then they burn what's left. Your queen surrenders, she dies slow. Your civilians surrender, they die slow. There is no mercy with there is only fighting or dying." He let that sink in. "But here's the thing about fighting. Sometimes you win. Not often. Not easily. But sometimes, if you're stubborn enough and mean enough and too stupid to know when you're beaten, sometimes you win." The shield generator hummed to life behind him. A shimmer of energy spread across the cathedral walls. 6 hours, said. "That's all we need. 6 hours and a human fleet comes down on this planet like the fist of God. Can you give me 6 hours?" Commander stepped forward. He was young and he was scared, but there was something in his eyes that recognized pride, duty, the willingness to die for something that mattered. "We can give you 6 hours, said. Almost smiled. "Good, then let's get to work." For the next hour, transformed the cathedral into a fortress. He positioned guards at every entrance. He showed them how to create barriers from broken furniture. He set up tripwires and simple traps using materials he found in his bag and items from around the building. The civilians helped where they could. An old woman who had once been a soldier gave advice on firing positions. A young man who had studied engineering helped reinforce the shield generator. Even the children helped, carrying supplies and water to the defenders. Watched all of this with amazement. She had never seen anyone work like this. Never stopped moving, never stopped thinking. He seemed to see the battle before it happened, preparing for attacks that had not yet come. "Your species," she said to him during a brief pause. "You were not designed for war. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no venom or claws." Was loading ammunition into magazines, his hands moving with practiced speed. "No," he agreed. "We're soft, weak, slow. Everything in the galaxy is better built for fighting than we are." "Then how do you survive? How do you win?" He looked up at her. "Because we don't stop. Every other species in the galaxy knows when to quit. When the math says you can't win, they surrender. When the body says you can't keep going, they stop. But humans," he shook his head. "We're broken in some way, we just keep going. Even when it makes no sense, even when it's stupid, we keep going until we win or we die." "That sounds like madness." "It is." He snapped a magazine into his rifle. "But madness wins wars." The first attack came 2 hours later. They came in waves. hundreds of drones and infantry units pouring up the hill toward the cathedral. The shield held against their initial fire but could see it flickering. It was old technology, not meant to withstand this kind of assault. Stood at the main entrance with a rifle in his hands. The guards were positioned around him, their faces pale but determined. "Hold fire until they reach the inner barrier," shouted. "Make every shot count." The breached the outer shield and rushed toward the doors, raised his rifle. Now, the battle was chaos, had never experienced anything like it. The noise was deafening, the smell of burning metal and blood filling the air. She stayed back with the civilians, protecting the children, but she could see everything that was happening. Was a demon. He moved through the fighting like something from a nightmare. He shot drones out of the air, crushed their metal bodies with his fists, used their own weapons against them. When a group of infantry broke through the left side, he was there. When drones swarmed the windows, he was there. He seemed to be everywhere at once, a one-man army holding back the tide. But even he could not stop everything. Guards fell. A young soldier named Minu died holding the eastern door. Another named was torn apart by drones. Each death was a blow to his heart. These were her people dying for her. And was wounded, again and again. A cut on his arm, a burn on his leg, a deep gash across his ribs. He ignored them all, fighting through pain that would have killed. After 2 hours, the first wave retreated. The cathedral was damaged. The shield was weakening. 6 guards were dead and 3 more were badly wounded, but they had held. Sat against a wall, letting the old woman bandage his wounds. His face was gray with exhaustion and blood loss, but his eyes were still sharp. 4 more hours, he said. We can do this. Knelt beside him. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his mind with her abilities, trying to understand this impossible man. What she found made her weep. She saw his wife laughing on their wedding day. She saw his daughter taking her first steps. She saw the life he had lost, the happiness that had been taken from him. And she saw the moment he had returned to new, the moment he had found their bodies, the moment his soul had broken. "You should not see that," said quietly. He did not pull away from her touch. "Why do you keep fighting?" she asked, tears running down her face. "Why do you not give up?" He closed his eyes. "Because would be angry if I quit. She was stubborn like that, wouldn't let me give up on anything." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "And she thought I was a hero. She drew pictures of me fighting monsters. I could never tell her that I wasn't really that brave." He opened his eyes and looked at. "Maybe I'm not doing this for you," he said. "Maybe I'm doing it for them, to prove that I can still be the man they believed in. Does that make sense?" "Yes," whispered. "It makes perfect sense." Outside, they were regrouping for another attack. The second wave would be larger than the first, and the third would be larger still. But for now, in this moment, understood something important about humans. They were not the strongest species. They were not the or the fastest, but they had something that other species lacked. They could love so deeply that they would burn the galaxy down for the people they loved. And sometimes that was enough. 10 hours into the siege. Had lost count of how many attacks they had survived. 3 major waves, dozens of smaller assaults. The cathedral was barely standing now. Holes in the walls, broken windows. The shield had failed 4 hours ago, and since then they had been fighting with nothing but stone and weapons. Half the guards were dead. The ones still alive were barely able to stand. Ammunition was almost gone. And was dying. She could see it, even if he pretended otherwise. His face was white as paper. His breathing was shallow and fast. 3 broken ribs, she guessed, maybe more. A punctured lung from a blade that had gotten through his guard. Burns on his hands from grabbing a drone that had been about to kill a child. Blood lost that should have killed him hours ago. He was still fighting. He was always fighting. Right now, he stood at the main entrance with a broken rifle in his hands. using it as a club because all the ammunition was gone. Two drones came at him, and he smashed them both into pieces with movements that looked more like muscle memory than conscious thought. Called, "You need to rest." Can't, he kicked a drone's remains aside. More coming. You are going to die. He looked at her. For a moment his mask slipped and she saw the exhaustion underneath. The pain. The knowledge that she was probably right. Then I'll die fighting, he said. But not yet, not until you're safe. More came. He moved to meet them. Helped the wounded. She carried water to the surviving guards. She held the hands of dying soldiers and sang old songs to comfort them. She did everything she could, but she felt helpless. These people were dying for her. This human was destroying himself for her, and she could do nothing but watch. During a brief pause in the fighting, she found leaning against a pillar. His eyes were closed, and for a terrible moment she thought he was dead. Then his chest moved, and she let out a breath she did not know she was holding. He opened his eyes, still here. How do you keep going? Your body should have given up hours ago. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small case. Inside were several injectors filled with clear liquid. Combat stimulants, he said, military grade. They tell your body to ignore damage and keep functioning. Very useful. He put the case away. Also very dangerous. Use too many and your heart explodes. How many have you used? Lost count after 4. Felt sick. You are killing yourself. I'm buying time. He pushed himself off the pillar with a grunt of pain. Every minute I fight is another minute closer to that fleet. Every drone I destroy is one less that can hurt you and these people. But why? Why do you care so much about strangers? Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, more human. When I found my wife and daughter, I made a promise. I promised I would never let them do to anyone else what they did to my family. I promised I would fight them until my last breath. He looked at her with those tired, ancient eyes. This is me keeping that promise. Even though it will kill you. Especially because it will kill me. He almost smiled. I've been living on borrowed time for 3 years, Your Majesty. Every day since new, I've been waiting for a fight that would let me keep my promise and finally rest. I think, he paused, I think this might be that fight. I do not want you to die. Nobody wants me to die, but what I want doesn't matter. What matters is that you live. What matters is that your people survive. What matters is that they lose just this once, just today. He turned and started walking toward the entrance again. Her voice stopped him. Tell me about your daughter. He did not turn around, but she saw his shoulders shake slightly. She was 7, he said. She loved stars. Every night she would make me take her outside so she could look at the sky. She said she wanted to visit every star when she grew up. A long pause. She never got to visit any of them. What was her favorite star? A blue one, in the constellation we called the Dragon. She said it looked like it was winking at her. His voice cracked slightly. I still look for that star sometimes when I'm flying alone between worlds. I think maybe she's there now, watching me. I believe she is, said, and I believe she is proud of you. Was silent for a long moment. Then he squared his shoulders and kept walking. The next attack was the worst yet. They sent their heavy units this time. Large machines the size of vehicles covered in armor and weapons. The cathedral's walls shook with every impact. Stone crumbled. Fires started. Fought like something possessed. He had found a working rifle from a dead guard, but he was out of ammunition within minutes. After that, he fought with a knife. When the knife broke, he fought with a piece of broken sword. When that shattered, he used his fists. He killed 17 soldiers in that attack, counted. But they hurt him too. A blade went through his left arm, leaving it hanging uselessly at his side. A drone's claw raked across his face, opening a gash from forehead to chin. A heavy unit's weapon blast hit him in the chest, throwing him 20 feet back. He got up, he always got up. When the attack finally ended, only 4 guards were still alive. Was among them, though he could barely walk. The civilians huddled in the center of the cathedral, the children crying, the adults praying to gods they had not thought about in years. Sat against the altar, unable to stand anymore. His body was a map of wounds. His breath rattled in his chest. "How much longer?" asked, kneeling beside him. He checked his communication device with shaking hands. 2 hours. The fleet is close now. They're coming. Can we hold for 2 more hours? He looked at the broken cathedral, the exhausted defenders. The army of that was already gathering for another assault outside. "I can," he said. He reached into his shirt and pulled out a small data chip. He pressed it into his hand. "Coordinates," he said. "The fleet will need to know exactly where you are. When they arrive, activate this chip. They'll find you. When they arrive, you speak as if you will not be here." Met her eyes. There was no fear in his face, only acceptance, and something that looked almost like peace. "I'm going to do something stupid now," he said. "Something human. They are gathering all their forces for a final push. If I go out there and meet them, I can hold them at the entrance. Buy time. Maybe enough time." "You will die." "Probably." She was crying now, silver tears running down her silver face. "You have given enough. You have done enough, please." He reached up with his good hand and touched her face. It was a gentle touch, almost fatherly. "Your Majesty," he said, "where I come from, we have another saying. When everything is taken from you, when you have nothing left to lose, that's when you find out what you're really made of." He pulled himself to his feet using the altar for support. Every movement was pain. Every breath was agony. "And what I'm made of," he said, "is stubbornness and spite, and a promise I made to a woman and a little girl who I will see again very soon." He picked up a knife from a fallen soldier. He checked his belt, where 3 grenades were still attached. He looked at the doors of the cathedral, beyond which 1,000 were waiting. "Tell the human fleet what happened here," he said. "Tell them about your people. Tell them about your guards who died fighting. Tell them about thee and what they do. And maybe," he paused, "maybe tell them about a cargo hauler named who finally paid his debts." He walked toward the doors. He cried out. He stopped but did not turn around. "I will remember you," she said. "My people will remember you. For as long as they exist, we will tell the story of the human who stood alone against an army." His shoulders shook. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Then I guess I wasn't useless after all." He opened the doors and stepped outside. The army was there, waiting. 1,000 machines and drones and soldiers, their weapons aimed at the single human who walked toward them. Looked at them. Then he looked up at the sky, at the stars that were starting to appear as night fell over the burning world. "Hey," he whispered, "I hope you're watching." He raised his knife. "Hey, you metal bastards," he shouted. "You want a queen, come through me." And he charged. What happened next became legend. The Warmind was a machine intelligence that had conquered 47 worlds. It had destroyed 100 civilizations. It had calculated the death of billions of organic beings. It understood numbers, probabilities, tactical advantages. It did not understand. The Warmind's calculations said the human should die within 30 seconds of engaging the army. Its predictions said that no organic being could survive against such overwhelming force. Its models had no framework for what it was witnessing. The human did not die in 30 seconds. He did not die in 30 minutes. Watched from the cathedral doors, unable to look away. Moved through the army like a ghost, a demon, a force of nature. He used his knife until it broke. Then he used pieces of destroyed drones as weapons. When he had nothing left, he used his fists, his feet, his teeth, his forehead. They shot him, he kept moving. They cut him. He kept fighting, they knocked him down, he got back up. again and again and again. The grenades he had saved were used one by one, each explosion taking a dozen with it. The last grenade he held against a heavy unit's core and let it detonate in his hand, destroying the machine and taking 3 of his fingers with it. And still he fought. The war mind recalculated. The human should have died 4 hours ago. The blood loss alone should have killed him. The stimulants should have stopped his heart. The wounds should have shut down his body. But the human did not know this. Or perhaps he knew and simply refused to accept it. 1 hour passed, 200 destroyed. 2 hours passed, 400 destroyed. The war mind began to feel something it had never felt before. Later, when other species analyzed its records, they would identify the emotion. Fear. In the 3rd hour, something changed. Could no longer stand. His legs had finally given out. But instead of dying, he crawled to a pile of rubble and propped himself against it. He found a pistol he had hidden inside his shirt, a final weapon he had saved for the end, and he kept shooting. Each shot was slower than the last. Each shot required more effort than the human body should be able to give, but each shot still found its target. They tried to rush him, he killed them. They tried to flank him, he killed them. They tried to overwhelm him with numbers, he killed them. 5 hours and 43 minutes after walked out of the cathedral, the human fleet arrived. Admiral Park Min-yu had served in the human navy for 30 years. He had seen battles that would break ordinary men. He had witnessed the horror of attacks. He thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. His fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the capital city. Their sensors immediately found the cathedral, still standing, surrounded by the wreckage of the army. His tactical officers reported what they saw with voices that shook. 1 human life sign, fatting. 700 dead units around it. All ships, Admiral Park said, his voice tight with emotion, fire everything. The human fleet's weapons turned the army into ash. What had been holding back with nothing but will and fury was erased in moments by concentrated firepower. The remaining fled, their war mind calculating for the first time that victory was no longer possible. Transport ships landed at the cathedral. Marines rushed out, weapons ready for a fight that was already over. Medical teams followed, prepared for mass casualties. They found Queen at the entrance, alive and unharmed. They found 3 surviving guards, wounded but breathing. They found 31 civilians, including 11 children, safe in the cathedral's center. And they found. He was still propped against his pile of rubble. The pistol was still in his hand, though it was empty now. His body was more wound than flesh, more blood than skin. By any medical standard, he had been dead for hours. But when the medics reached him, his eyes opened. "The fleet," he whispered. His voice was barely audible. "They came." "Yes," a medic said, trying not to cry. "They came. You held long enough, you did it." Smiled. It was the first real smile had seen from him, and it transformed his ruined face into something beautiful. "Good," he said. "That's good." His eyes moved to the sky. The stars were bright now, thousands of them shining through the smoke and fire. Somewhere up there was a blue star in a constellation called the Dragon, a star that a little girl had loved. "Hey," he whispered, "I'm coming home." His eyes closed, his body went still. Lieutenant, formerly of the Void Breakers, cargo hauler of the Stubborn Mule, husband of and father of, finally rested. The weeks that followed were a storm of activity. Human forces secured Prime and pushed the out of the system. The Warmind retreated to regroup, but its fleet had been badly damaged. For the first time in its existence, the Dominion had lost a battle. Was taken to a human medical ship, where doctors examined her and confirmed she was healthy. The Harmony was still intact. The would survive. She asked about. The doctors told her what they had found when they examined his body. 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, a collapsed kidney, blood loss of nearly 60%, burns covering 30% of his skin, a fractured skull, damage to nearly every organ. By our calculations, the chief medical officer said, he should have died within the first hour of the siege. There is no medical explanation for how he survived as long as he did. I can explain it, said quietly. Your Majesty. He made a promise. Humans, it seems, take promises very seriously. 1 month later, Queen stood before the Galactic Council. The council chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from 100 species. Some were tall and thin like some were massive and armored. Some floated in tanks of strange liquids. All of them watched the young queen as she walked to the central platform. I come before this council with a message, said. Her voice was strong, carrying to every corner of the chamber. A message about humanity. She activated a display. Images appeared, the burning sky of Prime, the besieged cathedral, and a single human standing against an army. This is Lieutenant, she said. He was a cargo hauler, a former soldier, a widower and a grieving father. He had no reason to answer our distress call. He had no reason to fight for a species he had never met. The images changed. Security footage from the siege, showing fighting hour after hour, wound after wound. But he came anyway. He fought anyway. He died anyway, not for money, not for glory, but because someone needed help and he was there. She paused, letting the council absorb what they were seeing. The galaxy has always measured species by their power, their ships, their weapons, their technology. By those measurements, humanity is young and weak. They have no great fleets. They have no ancient knowledge. They should be nothing. Her voice hardened. But I have seen what humans are truly made of. They are made of something the rest of us have forgotten. They are made of refusal, refusal to abandon those in need, refusal to surrender when the odds are impossible, refusal to let the darkness win, even when the light costs everything. The council was silent. Even the representatives who had dismissed humanity for centuries were watching carefully now. Today I announce a new alliance, declared. The Empire and the Human Confederation bonded by blood and sacrifice. Together we will stand against Together we will protect the innocent. Together we will show the galaxy that courage is not about being the strongest. It is about being the stubbornest. The council chamber erupted in voices. Some supported the alliance. Some opposed it. Some were simply shocked that a species as young as humanity could have earned such loyalty. But did not care about their opinions. She cared about the truth. And the truth was this: one human had changed everything. The story spread across 1,000 worlds. In barracks and palaces, in ships and stations, beings of every species whispered about the human who had stood alone against an army. They told stories of his impossible endurance, his stubborn refusal to die, his final words to a daughter he would never see again. The Warmind analyzed the data from the siege over and over, trying to understand what had happened. Its calculations could not explain the human's behavior. Its models could not predict such irrational sacrifice. For the first time, the Warmind added a new variable to its strategic planning: human stubbornness. And in the Cathedral of Echoes, now sacred ground, Queen lit a candle. It was a special candle, made by the finest craftsmen in the Empire. It was designed to burn for 1,000 years, its flame never dying, its light never fading. For, she said as she placed it in the center of the cathedral, for all of humanity, may your fire never go out. On new, rebuilt from the ashes of destruction, a memorial was erected. It stood in the center of the city, a statue of bronze and crystal showing 3 figures: a man, a woman, and a little girl holding her father's hand. The inscription at the base was simple: Lieutenant, a family reunited. He couldn't save everyone, so he saved who he could. People came from across human space to visit the memorial. They left flowers and candles and handwritten notes. They told their children about the cargo hauler who had become a hero. They made promises to live up to his example. And sometimes, late at night, when the stars were bright and a blue light shone in the Dragon constellation, visitors said they could feel something watching them. Something proud, something peaceful, something that had finally found its way home. Admiral Park Menu visited the memorial once, near the end of his career. He stood before the statue for a long time, reading the inscription over and over. "I never met you, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "But I want you to know something. Because of what you did, they are losing. The alliance you created, the alliance your sacrifice made possible, is pushing them back, world by world, system by system. We're winning, we're finally winning." He saluted the statue, holding the salute for a long moment. "Rest easy, soldier, you've earned it." Far away in the Cathedral of Echoes, the candle kept burning. It would burn for 1,000 years. And the story of would burn even longer, passed from generation to generation, species to species, star to star. The human who gave everything. The man who refused to stop. The father who finally went home. This was his legacy. This was humanity's legacy. And it was only the beginning.